I guess I can tear this thing up. I have some notes here, Mike Lubie. So, welcome to the show, by the way. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the morning briefing here on NoFilter.net, Caffeine TV. Jeff DeForest and the great, and continues to just improve his physical appearance. The great Mike Lubitz with us here on the show. So, I had a couple of things written out because I didn't want to blank at the moment when the pressure is on, the lights go on. And I had a little bit of a speech prepared that I was going to make at the lottery offices in the state of Florida, because I was about to give my account of how I felt to win the Mega Millions jackpot last night. And I had it planned out perfectly, Lubie. I knew I was going to win. I was doing my walk of life, and I figured there's a store somewhere on the route that would be one of those places that not even the lowest form of cretin would ever consider going in to purchase anything. And that's the kind of place that you have to go to get a winning lottery ticket, do you not? It has to be a remote bastion of the universe that only the decrepit, only the ill, only the invalids, only the people that nobody wants to know would ever consider frequenting. But I found that place, and I'm a little bit of a numerologist. I don't know about you, Louis. Do you have a lucky number?
15.
15 is your lucky number. Why? Thurman Munson? What would be the reason for 15?
My birthday is funny on the 16th, but I always liked 15 growing up. For some reason, I just like the number 15. I don't know why.
7 and 13 have always been key numbers for me. 7, of course, the Mick, and everybody wanted to be Mickey Mantle. I remember when we had these little numbers we used to stencil onto T-shirts. So when we were trying to make uniforms when I was growing up as a kid in Brooklyn in the 50s, and you had these little felt numbers that you could actually stencil onto your shirt. The problem was the colors always ran. So the first time that you washed that shirt, if you did wash it, then all of a sudden, if it was a white T-shirt, it turned yellow if the numbers, the numerology happened to be yellow. And everybody wanted to be the mix. So I was always number 8, although I don't consider 8 to be a particularly lucky number for me. But 7 did come in. 7 came in the Mega Millions, and it came in the Powerball jackpot. Now, why is it that I only play when the jackpot starts to approach like $1 billion, Libby? Like
does that.
Winning 200 million wouldn't be enough.
Yeah, exactly.
If you won a regular drawing and it got back like $40 million, of which 20 would come your way right away if you took the immediate payout, which I think would be my inclination, because I don't know if I'm going to live I'm not going to live another 30 years. I would take the under on that. At 72, approaching 73, that's coming up quickly. That big number is flashing on the board like there was a steward's inquiry on my life. But the odds of living there 30 years, and then who wants to have these people that you left behind have all of this money? What fun is that, Lubie? Although that's one of the weird things about even getting involved. Now, I only spent $10 on this thing last night, and I think I got back 4 because I had the Powerball number or whatever it was, the Mega Millions number, and everything else was a blank except for the number 7, but which I used. And 7, is that too common of a lucky number? Everybody plays 7, right? I've had good luck with 7 on roulette. 7 is not particularly a favorable number for me on the craps tables because I'm not a big pass line player. So when a guy rolls a few 7s on the come out roll before everything gets started, I'm usually not involved in that sort of thing unless I happen to be the roller. And you want the guy to get all the 7s out of his system right away, right? You say, come on, shoot her another 7. Roll like 15 of them in a row, and then we'll get into this thing. Usually a favorable number, but came in last night, and the rest of it was blank city. I had the speech prepared, though. I was ready to say something along the lines of, I think now I'm even for life.
Yeah.
Would that be enough to get me even for life? 1.1 billion, you're going to get half of that. So figure 550 million. And then what do you do with the money? Do you give your current mate, spouse, whatever, half right away and say, let's spend a couple of years apart and see if we want to come back together after we spend this money?
That's funny.
What would be the likelihood of that? 0.0, I would think. But anyway, that went by the board. And so somebody hit it, though, for $1.1 billion last night.
Oh, my God. Are you serious?
Not sure where or what the circumstances were, but I can assure you it's in a remote region of the universe. Somewhere in Kazakhstan, some American citizen had bought a ticket and ended up winning the Mega Millions last night. Powerball's on tonight. That's like $880 million. I'm right back involved. I'm going back to the same crummy store. Gonna pick my way through all of the schmutz that's in there and dodge the rats and see if I can't get $10 worth of Powerball tickets and maybe come up with a solution to my current problems. All right, so I hope you're the one. And, I'll be chasing this pot of gold. Now I won't play the Mega Millions again until the thing gets up to like $1 billion. How How stupid is that, right, Lubie? I mean, who's to say that you couldn't arbitrarily, with a quick pick, hit it again next week and maybe walk away with 20? That would be unbelievable. Normally, I am not a fan, and I'm reluctant to embrace change, especially when it comes to the bastardization. Is
Mm.
that the right way of putting it? The bastardizing of the playoffs in various professional sports.
Mhm.
Whenever there's expansion playoffs, I used to resist it with every emotional fiber that I had. You money grabbing fuckheads.
Yeah.
But I'd have to say that I'm somewhat in favor of it now in a couple of circumstances. Major League Baseball, I think, made its regular season far more meaningful right to the bitter end by adding in wild card playoff teams with the original format. And then when they added in the extra one, I was just bristling with the anger and venom that, wow, how could you do this? I mean, there are enough teams in the playoffs already. Let's make the regular season count. But what they did was that they actually made it more important by
Yep.
making it vital to become a division winner because you want to avoid the wild card round.
Yep.
And then on top of that, by adding in the wild card, they put more teams in the mix. So it comes down to the wire, and you'll find in the last week of the season, several things are yet to be decided. The fate of many teams, including the most illustrious. I mean, you can be the LA Dodgers, and you still have to win your division to benefit from spending all of that money. Otherwise, you're subjecting yourself to the bizarre and arbitrary nature of now what is a 2 out of 3 game series, but used to be just that 1 game showdown. Now that was really, really tenuous.
Yep.
2 out of 3, okay. You're thinking you have a little bit of a wiggle room there just in case you have a lousy game or you throw Yamamoto out there and you get shelled like you did in the opening game of the season. So you still have a chance to redeem yourself. But nonetheless, it's made the regular season more important. And I think in the NBA, they've done the same thing with this play-in business. Are you in agreement with that, Lubie? This whole thing of the 7 through 10, I think has added a lot of importance and has been far more successful in terms of making the regular season more relevant or important than the play-in tournament certainly was. Because, and let's face it, are you in wild anticipation of next year's in-season tournament? Not the play-in tournament, but the
No, the
in-season
end
tournament?
season tournament's stupid. It's
Aren't you
not.
thinking, hey, what are the dates on that? I want to make sure I buy tickets for some of these games. No way. Nobody gives a fuck that. The Lakers won it, and they're battling for the 10th spot there with the Golden State Warriors, 9 versus 10. But very close, Lubie. Have you been following the NBA? I mean, there's a very slight differential, especially in the West. Wow, very tenuous. Who's going to be in that 7 through 10 spot? You have New Orleans, Dallas, Sacramento, and Phoenix at 5 through 8. And they are 2 games apart altogether, those 4 teams. And then even the Clippers at 4 are only 2.5 games up on Sacramento, who is sitting there looking to dodge being in the play-in tournament. And you have same situation somewhat with a few less teams involved in the Eastern Conference, but an awful lot to be determined in the last couple of weeks of the regular season, which you would think is the perfect prescription for generating interest in what otherwise was a pretty dull period of time when everything was locked up and teams could just kind of coast. You don't have that luxury anymore of just cruising your way into being the 5th seed because a couple of losses. Next thing you know, you're sitting there at number 7 and you're subjecting yourself to the arbitrary. Again, well, we look at the very tenuous nature of a possible 1 game situation, and maybe to the point where, like the Miami Heat did last year, you have to play 2 games just to preserve your position in the playoffs. And then they made that monumental run all the way into the NBA Finals last year. But I would have to say that with as much resistance and as much outrage as I normally express whenever leagues make these kind of determinations that they're going to go ahead and expand the playoffs, it's worked in the Major League Baseball circumstance, and I think it's actually added an element of intrigue, a big one throughout the season for the NBA fans. Or do you feel like, hey, wait a minute, my team, what was in the top 8, they deserve to be in there no matter what? Are you a fan of this or not?
Yeah, I mean, look, the plan. I think it makes the last month. What are we? The last 10 games. So last 2 weeks to last month, a little bit more interesting. It gives because again, a lot of the time, a lot of these seem to be locked in. Like if you look at the top 8 right now, 6 to 8 in both conferences, there's movement from at least in the East to 8 on. Like the Heat are screwing around, and they still have a nice gap between 9 and 10.
Yes.
So right now, yeah, they'd be trying to move up, but at least they know they're locked in. This way, you don't want to be 7 through 10. You want to get to the 6. It makes trying to get to the 6 more important, So to me, it does add a little bit of value to the end of the regular season. And then the playing tournament is interesting. Look, I mean, if you're a 10, normally you'd be out, right? Well, you can find your way into the playoffs, like if you're the Hawks, like last year, you fucked around, but you found your way to be, what was it, a 7, I guess?
Yeah.
Like I like the play-in. I think the play-in's interesting. I think the in-season tournament's stupid. I don't understand it. And as you can see, it didn't help anyone who did well in it. Like the Patriots, I guess, ended up being okay. The Lakers were a fucking disaster after it, like outside of last night, obviously.
The Lakers win on the road against Milwaukee, which brings up the magic question always. Are we even following this anymore? What's going on with Doc Rivers since he took over as the coach of the Milwaukee Bucks? Slight improvement defensively, not as explosive offensively. 14-11 after being 30-13, was it?
Oh, Jesus.
30-13 under the previous coach, Adrian Griffin. They're 14-11 since Doc Rivers took over, and yet they're thinking, yeah, we're in much better shape.
No.
That's some strange, bizarre mathematics there. So some oddball numerology that they're doing in Milwaukee if they're considering that. But the Doc Rivers effect is still very much up for debate, and that had to be one of the most bizarre firings in midseason that we've ever seen when a team is 18 games above 500 and you let the coach go. I don't know what you were expecting this guy to do, and you would have to think since he was a first-year coach, head coach of the team, and a first-year head coach in the NBA, well, wouldn't you give this guy a little bit of leeway? Unless he did, was he caught, banging the owner's wife on his desk? What happened with this guy? I don't know that we ever got the full explanation, and we will never get the full explanation on this, Mike Lubie, and that is when you may get to it sometime, but. The Shohei Ohtani thing, a lot of people are looking at that. That wasn't even a press conference, Lubie. Can we really call that a press conference? Is it a press conference when somebody says, hey, I want the press to assemble here. I'm going to read a statement that nobody's going to understand. Somebody that we don't know if they have any credibility or not because they're brand new on the job here is going to try and interpret this for you. And as soon as that's done, whoosh, everybody out of here. No question.
It was creepy, weird, and all it did was give the people like us who have questions more ammo. Like I question it more now, not less. Like
it looks totally fugazi, doesn't it?
Whole thing's ridiculous, and I'd be hard pressed to believe that Ohtani is not involved in some way. Sorry.
How could you be that stupid? Is the question, right? we referenced this on one of our other shows. There was a wide receiver for the Dolphins. He got caught up in some kind of credit card fraud scheme. Was under federal indictment. He goes to court, and I happen to know the attorney. Unfortunately, because I had to use him in a case that I was involved in. I knew the attorney that defended him. And the opening line of this guy's defense was, you see that man right there? And he points to Tony Martin. He's fucking stupid. And the jury bought it. I mean, because they brought in a parade of celebrities after that. They gave testimony that was designed essentially to, and not necessarily confuse the jury, but to have them so enamored with the fact that this Tony Martin was a good guy that he ended up getting off, and nobody beats the rap in federal court. It's like a 95% conviction rate. So you're asking yourself, if you would use that opening line in any kind of law school mock trial, and you were trying to get to the point where you had the status where you could go on and apply for the bar exam, and you opened up by saying, you see that man over there, my client? He's fucking stupid. Do you think you would have graduated? They would have thrown you out of law school. I don't care. You could have been going to the University of Guam Law School, and they would have just said that no passe. You're done. You can't act like that. It was, the same thing like at the O.J. Simpson trial, right? Where if Johnny Cochran is in law school and he puts this stocking cap on his head and then a glove, and he says, if it doesn't fit, you must have quit. They would have laughed him out of school. Every professor would have flunked him. But that's the shit that works in court. But that being said, I mean, this is the level of scandal here when it comes to gambling is just barely scratching the surface. It happens to be Ohtani, so it's very much a banner headline all over the place. But look what's going on. You have Temple being investigated for point shaving. Temple University, 4 games have roused suspicion by an unusual amount of action going against Temple and large amounts of money suddenly coming in on games that otherwise wouldn't attract that kind of interest. And now you also have in the NBA, Jonte Porter of the Toronto Raptors. Jonte Porter being investigated, and this is interesting. This is where it really gets interesting because this is sort of a new development where everybody is betting these bizarre prop bets.
He threw like a line, right? Like he threw a prop. He went under whatever the
Couple of
fuck.
times, yeah. He left games when there was a prop bet out there that he would have, let's say, whatever, 8.5 rebounds or some number over under, and there was a suspicious amount of action on the under on both of these wagers. I don't know exactly the specifics of it. There was either rebounds or points or assists
Yeah,
or
like
something,
assist
block
or
shots.
rebound. Yeah.
Some obscure number that you would never. I mean, you would have to dig through the box score and maybe even be on hold with the Alliance Sports Bureau to try to figure out what it was, the number that these gambling interests were trying to get you to go ahead and invest your money in one way or the other. And in both of these games, where this huge amount of money suspiciously came in on one side of this thing, the under, with Jonte Porter, uh, he left both of those games mysteriously before accomplishing the number.
He didn't want to take a chance of going over.
Imagine that. Yeah, just went out of the game. He didn't want to throw any passes away. He didn't want to do anything bizarre. He didn't want to make it look obvious. He just left the game and said he was hurt. 2 times, not once, but 2 times. And this is a guy who's been on social media going back several years, talking about parlays that he made and wagers that he made.
Oh, no, really?
Yes. He was bragging about the fact that he hit some NCAA tournament parlays several years ago when X was Twitter. And so he has already intimated that or shown signs that this is an endeavor that he's been more than favorable in terms of getting involved in some kind of wagering. And here's an NBA player leaving games in which there are prop bets. I mean, so many things. So it's not even a Pandora's box, Lubie. I mean, this is a giant treasure chest of controversy that's been opened up. And this is all happening while Roger Goodell, imagine Roger Goodell is going to the Super Bowl and sitting next to him is a fucking bookie.
Yes.
You would never see this, right? May as well be some slimy guy that looks like Ratso Rizzo out of Midnight Cowboy there, the Dustin Hoffman character, just some decrepit slob that is taking action. Hey, Raj, you want to make a bet on a game? You're going to come up with the money this week? And sure enough, the sports world and openly embracing all of this to the extent that they have really subjected themselves to a kind of scrutiny that you would have to think is eventually going to produce some very, very negative results. But that's a curious one, right? What is Jonte Porter going to say? That he had no knowledge whatsoever? I mean, he could claim, hey, I didn't know anybody was betting on this. I hurt my knee. But very, very curious, Lubie. And this is just the beginning and scratching the surface of, I think, what we're going to see in the sporting world. Remember when all of our reporting had to be, you had to be a doctor to do this sort of thing? People would call in to sports talk shows and go, hey, DeForest, what do you think? What's that injury? And how long do you think so-and-so is going to be out? Yep. I'm like, well, what do I look like? Fucking Dr. James Andrews? Well, how the hell do I know? Well, I'm looking at an x-ray here. And sportscasters would nonetheless speculate, well, I think it's an ACL. It looks to me like half a season. As if you were Marcus Welby. But now, I mean, all of the conversations, never mind having to be some kind of medical analyst, you're going to have to be some kind of sick, degenerate psychiatry guy who can determine whether or not these guys really do have a problem. But very, very weird when you're looking at some of the circumstances that are happening. And that's a bizarre story. Jonte Porter. Just coincidence, Lubie?
No. I mean, he was doing so, like, it's not affecting the outcome of the game. So, and he's not a guy that's making tons and tons of money. He's making enough to me that I don't know why you would do that. But again, if he's gambling, then he could get down a lot. So if he can help these people make a lot of money and they would leave him alone because he gets 6 rebounds instead of 8. I mean, who would know that the pulling yourself is what fucked him? But again, he's scared to go away. Either could grab a couple rebounds by accident because it happens because you start getting into the game.
Ball falls into his hands, and all of a sudden the boys are angry because you screwed up, man. How did you get 7 rebounds when you needed to only get 6?
Shevin Smith, where he like throws it, and then they're like, "Yo, his play is really weird. Like he's running away from rebounds, he's throwing it out of bounds. Like that's not better." So he's like, "All right, fuck it. If I'm not in there, I can't do anything to fuck with this." But it's like, yeah, but that's worse because now you're openly saying, hello.
Your commissioners pretty soon are going to be like Pete Rose, Art Schlichter. Lenny Dykstra. I mean, you're going to have the most unscrupulous of sorts running these, and the most desperate of gamblers running these leagues to be able to understand what the fuck is really going on out there.
Exactly.
Well, where's Adam Silver on this? I mean, if you saw this arise, obviously the guy deserves his presumption of innocence, but nonetheless, I mean, if you're Adam Silver, wouldn't you have this guy in your office like right now,
Yep.
as we speak? Say, hey, wait a minute, Jonte. Tell me you knew nothing about this. Well, how is it bizarre coincidence that you just happened to get injured in the 2 games and take yourself out of the ball game in the 2 games where there was a substantial amount of wagering made on you accomplishing certain statistical barometers in a game? And look at what you've done. I mean, because we used to say, hey, wait a minute, how are you going to buy like an NFL player to fix a game? You can't, right? They're making $10 million a year. They're not going to fuck it up for some bookie's 50,000. But this is a whole different animal when you're talking about the differential between having 4 or 5 assists and somebody could spend a ton of money on that. All right, we got to run, but look for that scandals in all sports. I think are only going to expand. Headline, of course, by Shohei Ohtani, who still seems to be full of shit when he says he had no idea how this happened, and this Matsahura guy just happened to have access to his account. And nobody suspected anything when he sent off $4.5 million to this Matthew Boyer, who just happened to be a major bookmaker in California, who was, unfortunately for Ohtani in this case, under investigation for other activity. All right, we got to run. Opening day in Major League Baseball here in Miami is tomorrow, Lubie. And wow, no buzz whatsoever. I hope it's more excitable, for people in other cities. The fact that the Major League Baseball season, even though it really started already with the Dodgers and Padres, a couple of games, let's face it, the celebration will be on. Do you hear anything? Have you even seen a Marlin hat being worn by some 6-year-old in the grocery store? Nothing.
I didn't realize it was a buddy of the professor was talking about it this weekend, and I was like, oh, yeah, what's that, in 2-3 weeks? He's like, Thursday. I'm like, Thursday?
It's tomorrow, opening day in town. Nobody gives a fuck. It's amazing. Weirdest sports town in America. It's called South Florida now, the area here, but essentially, as we said, we're talking about Miami. Nobody knows it as anything else. All right, we got to run. A lot of fun being with you. For Mike Lubie, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks for tuning in here on NoFilter.net, Caffeine TV, to today's edition of the Morning Briefing.